James at 16 will not be presented this evening, but will return next week at its regular time. Stay tuned now for a special 2-hour What Really Happened to the Class of 65.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Very happy to welcome Andrew Pepoy back to Word Balloon. Good to see you, Andrew.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you, getting me on so quickly,
Well, hey, man, I think it's good to get people on who have Kickstarter campaigns happening and get them on when they're already active. So hopefully we'll inspire some people to, support the new Kickstarter for your great character, Simone and Ajax. There they are. Very excited.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I mean, this is the first day. We are at about 8 hours in, and we just passed 50% funded, which is fantastic. And just before we went on the air here, I found out, now been named a project we love, which is always nice that, Kickstarter's paying attention to it too. So, so things are going well. I can't complain. I mean, it's just nice to see people supporting fun comics. As I always say with Simone and Ajax, like this is a little bigger shot for people of like the cover for the book that I'm pushing now. This is going to be collecting. This is called What's Black and White and Red All Over, and is collecting all of the classic black and white Simone and Ajax comics from the 90s.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I did a whole lot of these things back in the 90s, and they've never been collected before. People might be a little more familiar with like last year I came out with a brand new color book, Lemmings and Tigers and Bears, Oh My, which, is bright and in full color. But,
sure.
But I thought people would be interested in seeing the early days of, where these characters came from. And you really are getting some of the early days. I mean, one of the stories in it, that I'm not going to try to fix it up. I'm going to leave it just as badly drawn as it was. Is the very first story I did with them back in late 1989 when I was still in college, and it was published in 1990 in my college arts magazine. It's a different take on Simone and Ajax than what they are now, but it's still the gist of the characters. The humor wasn't there. I was a little too artsy and pretentious for my own good back then, so I was trying to be a little more deep and meaningful. But nowadays, I always tell people, if you're looking for anything meaningful, it's not going to be in one of my books. I just want to make fun comics. There's enough darkness in the world. I want to make some more cheesy fun. Groaningly bad jokes. Puns you're going to hate yourself for loving. Or as I've done in a couple of the stories in the past. make fun games out of it. Like, how many ABBA song titles can you find worked into the dialogue of the story? Or how many Humphrey Bogart movie titles can you find worked in? So I just, I'm being silly. That's the thing. It's like, that's my thing. I just want to do something fun and light.
Absolutely, man. Well, you've had long runs with Bongo, with Simpsons comics,
Mm-hmm.
great stuff with the Archie universe. Not only Betty and Veronica and other things, but Katie Keene as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So give people for people who have been familiar with Simone and Ajax, give them the brief background on who they are.
Okay, well, I'll also give them a quick, brief background for those people who don't know who I am. I mean, I'm not the most well-known guy in comics. So I've been doing comics professionally for this year makes 34 years, believe it or not. I have worked. I'm best known as an inker, and I've known for inking the Simpsons comic book for 18 years. Various Fables titles for about 10. Scooby-Doo, Sonic the Hedgehog, a lot of X-Men stuff in the 90s, a lot of Marvel superhero stuff in the 90s. But I've always been, I didn't get into comics with the intention of being an inker. So I always had been wanting to write and draw my own stuff. So along the way, I have written and drawn other stuff. I am known for my very brief, but apparently definitive run on the Little Orphan Annie newspaper strip, where I redesigned Little Orphan Annie.
Andrew, did you work with? Oh God, now I'm going to forget her name. Chicago Sun-Times, right, or maybe it was Tribune, but a woman journalist. Who was the writer of Little Orphan Annie?
Jay Mater, a New York Daily News columnist, was the writer on Annie. Yeah.
A friend of a friend took over the strip until the end. She was the last writer on Little Orphan Annie.
Okay, I had no idea. I thought for some reason Jay had written it till the bitter end, but no, he almost did write the end. I mean, when I left Little Orphan Annie, we were actually going to end the strip.
Wow.
So I somewhere, I'm sure in some box, still have the script and probably my roughs, because I gotten as far as roughing out that last week. And I remember roughing out that last Sunday with Annie and Amelia flying off in the plane off into the sunset, and that was going to be the end of the strip. Wow. And at the last minute, Alan Kupperberg came on as artist to take it over.
Wow, Paul's brother. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did Annie for a while. I love the strips. I also did a guest run in 2019 on Dick Tracy. I don't know if you knew that.
Joe Staten, I did not know that.
Yeah, Joe would take a couple times a year a vacation for a couple weeks, and so they would do what they called these Dick Tracy minute mysteries. Joe wasn't going to work ahead and kill himself to get to take a vacation. He would just have a friend come in for 2 weeks and do a very short little story. So I did a guest run with Dick Tracy, and we brought back for the first time since 1974 Friday Foster. She was the first black character, woman character to ever have her own newspaper strip.
Wow.
And it ran from like 1970 to 74, and she hadn't been seen since. But we had access to the entire Tribune library of characters, and the writer said to me, "Hey, you want to do Annie again?" And I was like, "No, I think I've done my time on Annie." And we ended up coming with Friday Foster. So that was a lot of fun. But like you said, I also wrote and drew Katie Keene for a while at Archie Comics.
Yeah.
That was fun to do. Katie was my mom's favorite character, so I had to do it right, because otherwise I know I'd hear it from my mom and my aunt. But then the other thing I'm known for over the years is a lot of Archie covers. Yeah.
Absolutely. Here's one of my variant favorites that you did for the afterlife of Archie. And there you go. Some good girl Betty and Veronica moment right there.
Yeah. And someday maybe I will actually draw the cover that they rejected for that one. That at first they were like, "Oh yeah, do that. Keep pushing how far you can push things." And I had gotten to the point where I was just about to start penciling something a bit more extreme than that. And that they had okayed. And the next morning I woke up to an email and they were like, "Oh no, my God, we can't do that." So it was just too much even for what Archie Comics was doing. But I loved doing those. I haven't done an Archie cover in a while. Hopefully I do some more at some point. But I was doing a lot of covers from about 2013 from about 2013 until the pandemic, and then the pandemic just sort of wiped out my, the pandemic did a real number on the business, and I've only done a couple covers since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to
Simone and Ajax.
Simone and Ajax. Yeah. Tell me tell me their background. And again, you could see, comparing this to the Betty and Veronica image I just showed, it's a great combination of your good girl art and also Bigfoot cartooning, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's like someone one of my favorite lines I ever got from anybody that I've used multiple times to describe it is someone said it was the look of an Archie comic, but the sensibilities of a Marx Brothers movie. So I've always loved that line.
Sure.
And so yeah, I mean, it just sort of evolved out of doodles I was doing back in college. Ajax first appeared in a painting that you can actually see in the previous book, and this book, yeah, and like I was doing an assignment in class, and I was never one to like always want to obey the rules on the class assignments in art classes, and somebody said, this painting assignment was, it had to all be based on different elements taken from different photographs combined into a watercolor painting, and I just decided it was missing something, and I ended up painting this little tiny green dinosaur off in the corner that just didn't belong there, but it just, for me, it made the painting. And I was mistaken on my names from mythology. I was mistaking Ajax for Atlas, supporting the world, and so thinking it was Ajax, I was like, okay, so I titled the painting Ajax Triumphant, but unaware, because he's just hanging out there, doesn't know that he's making the painting, and he just sort of kept going from that. And Simone evolved out of doodles inspired by a cute girl who sat next to me in statistics class. It was a horribly boring class, and she was there in inspiration. So yeah, and I've been, I was, like I said, I was being too artsy with them at first, but then a few years later, I had wanted to do much more humor kind of stuff. I'd really finally by that time embraced my love of a lot of the Archie stuff and Dan DeCarlo's art and things like that. And I kept talking about it. And finally, Rob Walton, if you remember Rob Walton, did Ragmop, Grendel, things like that. And he's actually about to come out with a revamped, not revamped, but collection of his other series, Bloodlines, that he's sort of has tweaked all up and is coming out with. He had a few extra pages in an issue of Ragmop, and he was like, "Hey, can you do something in with Simone and Ajax in 3 or 4 pages?" And I was like, "Okay, I'll give it a shot." So he was the one who really got me off my butt, talking about doing Simone and Ajax, and finally got it going. And then Michael Cohen, who is best probably known for a series in the 90s called Strange Attractors, was starting up an anthology called Mythography, and he, wrote me a letter, because of course this was pre-email days, wrote me a letter and said, "Hey, would you want to do Simone and Ajax for our anthology?" And so I started doing that, and then Randy Zimmerman over at Arrow Comics asked me to do stuff. So I just ended up doing a bunch of stories for those anthologies and Negative Burn and other things, and just had a fun time doing them. And unfortunately, other work got in the way after a while, so I wasn't doing a whole lot with them in the early 2000s. But then Mike Gold's Comic Mix online site started doing a bunch of comics, and they asked me to do that for that, which led to a collection from IDW. And now, years later, I'd actually started this book that came out last year, a number of years earlier. Life got in the way, but I had without going into the gory details, had some health stuff going on, and I decided, okay, when I get better, I don't want to keep saying I'm going to do this. I'm going to actually do this, and that's what led to me finally doing the Kickstarter and making that book happen. But yeah, they are 2 very silly characters. Simone is a 20-something girl, and Ajax is a 3-foot tall cartoony dinosaur. And how, what are these two people doing hanging out together? Or this, person and dinosaur hanging out together? Well, you can actually find out in the new book. There's the 30-page origin story, you might say, of how they met. And I can send them to any time or place I feel like sending them without a TARDIS. and And so it's just interesting to see, what happens when they go to ancient Atlantis, or what happens when Simone goes to Valkyrie school. Or Ajax loves playing the hard-boiled 1930s style, detective, narrating his own adventures, as he goes along. Because of course, Ajax always looks so fierce in a fedora.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I love when
yeah.
you try. I don't have an image ready, but I do enjoy when you put the fedora on him and stuff. That's terrific. No, man. Again, I think this really plays to your big strengths, and
Yeah.
and I mean, people can tell from the image, and not to get you in trouble because it is a different design, but for fans of old comics and stuff, Ajax has a bit of the shmoo in him a little bit.
I'll take that as a compliment. I haven't heard
Yeah,
that comparison before, but I will definitely take that as a compliment. I mean, if you could see a little further off to this bookshelf that I'm pointing at, there is that
Yes.
Al Cap's Shmoo collection that came out years ago. And I certainly watched the Shmoo cartoon when I was a kid.
You forgive me for a tangent, but Al Cap is fascinating because he's a scary, dark guy that did some really bad stuff in the 70s. And it's a shame because the Little Abner strip was so brilliant.
Oh,
And
yeah.
also, I mean, it was funny. He started as a liberal, and then by, I think, the hippie generation, he was kind of turned off by the left and
Mhm.
became more of a conservative. And I mean, this guy was, I always describe him from a talent standpoint as Charles Schultz with more of a personality. And that's no disrespect to the great Charles Schultz,
Mhm.
but he was very glib. He was on talk shows all the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
I'm sure you've seen the Lennon and Yoko bed-in scene where he goes and just berates them. What are you doing? You're making that. You're not making any sense. And he's just. I mean, I saw him on Cavett be incredibly glib in the early 70s and stuff. And yeah, he was in it, but a horrible man that attacked
Yeah.
women, frankly.
Yeah. No, I mean, he was, he wasn't always that way. As you said, I mean, he just sort of got weird and stranger as time went on. But I mean, I heard all sorts of interesting stories about him from Bob Lubers. I happened to be lucky enough to get to be friends with the legendary cartoonist Bob Lubers. If for those of you not familiar with Lubers, if you've ever seen any of those 1940s Wings comics covers with the woman jumping out of the plane with a machine gun blasting at the Nazis, with their skirt billowing up, those were mostly Bob.
That's awesome.
And Bob was the art director at Fiction House for a while back in after World War II. I mean, now Bob was a really interesting character as well. Like Bob lived this amazing life that he just. I mean, for him, comics was just part of what he did. But like, say for example, like he did all these great comics, but his favorite thing ever in his entire life was the time in the late 30s when he got to play with Tommy, because Bob was a jazz musician as well. Bob played piano and he played trombone and trumpet and all, played a bunch of different instruments. He got to play with Tommy Dorsey on Tommy Dorsey's radio show once.
Wow.
That
wow.
For Bob was his favorite thing in his entire life. I mean, this guy lived to be like 94 years old. So he lived a full life. But yeah, he was in a traveling jazz band in the 30s before he became a comic book artist. And then he was like a paratrooper Marine on the beaches of Normandy on D-Day. He was an actual witness to the signing of the surrender of Japan. He knew Eisenhower to some degree. Excuse me 1 second.
Sure. Wow, that's amazing, man. Seriously.
And one of his golfing buddies was Larry Clinton, the big band leader.
Wow.
Yeah, and he just had this interesting life, knew all these guys, knew Charles Schultz as well. You mentioned Charles Schultz. Just had this great life with all these interesting bits that happened to him along the way. And then in the 70s, I mean, like if you were growing up, or just watching TV in the 70s, so many of those commercials, so many famous commercials you saw, Bob storyboarded.
Oh wow!
Like the Lonnie Anderson toothpaste commercial. You remember that?
I don't, but I intend to look it up on YouTube. I know I've seen Farrah Fawcett, selling Noxzema and shaving cream for Joe Namath. I forget who she shaved, and shampoo commercials and stuff. No, I'd love to see a Lonnie Anderson commercial.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I was lucky enough to be friends with Bob for the last 20 years of his life, and he told me all sorts of Cap stories because Bob used to ghost for Cap. Bob ghosted Little Abner for on and off for many years. He worked with Bob on their own strip together. Bob worked with Al on this strip called Long Sam for many years about the hillbilly girl.
Okay.
And then at one point Cap had Bob painting these Little Abner, these big Little Abner paintings, and and Al would just sign his name to him, and that's all that Al was doing in the later years, was just signing his name to the stuff.
Just like Bob Kane with
right, right,
stuff.
Yeah. And he had Stan Drake and Bob Lubers, two fantastic artists, ghosting most of the stuff. Frank Frazetta ghosted a lot of his stuff.
That I knew. I knew Frank ghosted for Cap. Yes.
Yeah.
And really, Andrew, it's one of the things I love talking to you about, and Chris Somney too. Chris is younger than us, but he's a big comic strip aficionado.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And also, and now I forget, and you're going to tell me the creator, but I know you met and I think had dinner with the guy who did On Stage.
Leonard Starr.
It was Leonard Starr. Okay.
Yeah, because I took over Annie from him because he retired from Annie, and that's how I got the job. Yeah. No, I had dinner with him once. I mean, that was our only real interaction. I mean, and I can't say had a huge amount of chatting with him, but it was nice to meet him, and he's a fantastic artist. I mean, you should have Charles Pelto on sometime to discuss Drake and Cat and Drake and Star and all that sort of stuff. And he's a local Chicago area guy.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's the publisher of Classic Comics Press.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Who's done the Big Ben Bolt books and the On Stage and the Juliet Jones books and so so many Cisco Kid, so many more. And he's working on Frank Godwin's Connie right now.
Oh, that's true. I should have him on. You'll have to share his contact info with me. I love those books. I love what Hermes Press does. I love what IDW did, and I believe now it's Clover Press that has taken over D. Mulaney's, comic strip collections that he is.
Yeah, Library of American Comics. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
In fact, last night I was talking with my friend Mike Cronenberg, and we were talking about Frank Robbins' comic book work, and it's like, listen, it was great and it was distinct, but Johnny Hazard really is his great work.
Can you see what's above my head here?
I'm imagining it's a Johnny Hazard original.
It's a Johnny Hazard Sunday original. Yeah, let's tilt the camera here. Yeah,
there you go. Hold on, I'm going to zoom in. Keep the camera up. There we go.
Yeah,
look at that, everybody. Now, honestly, if you could, I wish you could zoom in even further, everybody, because truly, Frank. I mean, it's, as I said last night, if you enjoy Milton Caniff's Terry and the Pirates and Steve Cannon, I mean, Frank had his own spin, but it's very evocative of what Caniff did on those strips, I would say, as Johnny Hazard. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, and I mean, here's the thing. I know it's going to sound sacrilegious. I like Frank Robbins stuff better than I do Milton Caniff's, even though,
Yeah, I mean, Milton's the bigger name.
Right. I mean, I love Milton Caniff because, I mean, as you can see, here I'll go. There you got the Terry and the Pirates books. I mean, I've got my love of strips here. I've got the Terry and the Pirates. I've got my Roy Crane's Wash Tubs and Captain Easy collection. Nice. Floyd Gottfredson, Mickey Mouse. Some Peanuts up there on the shelf. And yeah, the other original you can see up on the wall there is another great forgotten artist. Let's see if I can tilt over to that without knocking the camera over. Let's see. There we go. That is a Russell Keaton Flying Jenny Sunday from 1941, I think. Wow. Another one of my favorite artists, one of my big influences. I love his stuff. And he's one of those artists that's just sort of been lost to time. Even though he actually, I don't know if you knew this one, he was the original artist on Superman.
I didn't. On the strip?
On the strip, on the original pitch strips,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, see, he was Siegel and Schuster's favorite artist, and they approached him to draw this. And he actually drew the first Superman strips. There's only like one really lousy photostat that survives, and Dennis Kitchen published that in a book a few years ago. But yeah, Russell Keaton was actually the original choice to be the artist on Superman.
So his stuff is not in Action One.
No. Right. Okay. But I'm saying that but if you look at Schuster's stuff and the style that they were going for, you can tell that they loved Russell Keaton's work. And had Russell Keaton survived World War II, he probably, he died right at the very, he wasn't in combat. He died from too many paratrooper training jumps. He was a paratrooper trainer.
Wow.
And just sort of messed him up, and he died right at the end of World War II. So had he survived World War II, we probably would have been, we'd be talking a lot more about Russell Keaton. But unfortunately, we're he's one of those guys. But I love, it's like but he's one of my big influences. If you look at some of if you look at his stuff and you look at my stuff, you can see that, like, Roy Crane, Dan DiCarlo, Russell Keaton for a long time were my big three. Those were my big three influences.
Well, I loved the opportunities you got, and I've got a couple examples. I showed that Great Betty and Veronica variant, but I loved when you would dip into sci-fi with Archie, like this EC homage.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. And then also, I don't know what this is for, but I love this commission.
Oh, well, that's not a commission. That was the cover for a pitch for a proposed series that I've almost had published multiple times, called Monica Moon. And if you go on my website, pepoy.com, which is where you can also find out about the Kickstarter. For anyone who's like listening and wondering where you can go for the Kickstarter, go to pepoy.com. There's a link to Monica Moon, and you can read the series pitch and and you can see some of the art that I've done with her. But yeah, she was originally, I was asked by a Spanish publisher to come up with something, and I came up with that, and turns out they were looking for something much more X-rated than what I was wanting to do. So that didn't happen. But a few years later, another a publisher that sort of came and went very quickly, that had tried to do them, and I actually drew a story with her that I ended up self-publishing as like the very first Spicy Tomato Studios publication a number of years ago. Spicy Tomato Studios is my imprint. And do you get the reference there?
Monica Moon.
No, Spicy Tomato.
Oh, Spicy Tomato. Is that from that Saturday Night Live?
No,
I think the hot spicy number, Rita Moreno.
But because I mean, it's I'm known for drawing, like you said, the
I can appreciate that. Sure, it's your spin on good girl art. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can see it again, man.
But Monica is actually, Monica will be my next Kickstarter, not this one that we're doing right now, but Monica's gonna be my next Kickstarter.
Good to hear.
Because again, it's one of those things where it's like I've been talking about doing her for years, and now's the time to get off my butt and make it happen. But
that's
great, so it's a very retro outer space kind of thing.
Yeah.
The basic gist is that she is an Earth girl, like a 19-year-old Earth girl student at University of North Carolina, gets picked up by aliens on a lonely road at night one night and whisked off into space. And when she's finally rescued, the people who the people who rescue her, they've never even heard of Earth. So they don't even know where to take her home. So she's just stuck in outer space, and it turns out that outer space is just like all those old Buck Rogers things with the fin spaceships and the bubble helmets.
Exactly. Truly, man. I mean, this wonderful Wally Wood inspired cover you did for Archie Science Fantasy is great.
Thanks.
And yeah, man. No, absolutely. And I'm a sucker for classic space opera. So I think that's great. And I think it's smart to do that. Why not? One of my favorite inking jobs you did back in the day, pardon me, I'm burping because I'm having seltzer water while we're talking, is Codename Knockout, of course.
Mm.
So, and you were the inker. Who was the artist on this?
I think the penciler on the first couple issues was a guy named Chris Robinson. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the credits there. Chris Robinson,
yeah,
a couple, and then John Lucas penciled the last several issues down to the final issue of the series. And
did you ink this cover, Andrew?
Oh no, that's a painted cover by J.G. Jones.
I beg your pardon. Okay, sorry about that, everybody.
No. I wish I could draw like that, but no, that's Jeff. So yeah, but no, I had a good time doing that. That was my first Vertigo series. I had done a mini series just before that. I'd done Sandman Thessaliad over Sean McManus.
Wow.
And when Shelley didn't have anything else for me, she got one of the other editors to I'm trying to remember I think it might have been Axel Alonso at the time, possibly, I don't know. Anyway, to have me do Codename Knockout for a while, and I did that for the last I think the last 7 issues of the series or something like that. Yeah. had fun doing that. And
you did a bit of work in the Fables universe as well, of course.
10 years. Yeah, I did a lot of work on Fables stuff.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I was the sort of what you might call the secondary inker on Fables. Like it was Steve Lealoa's book. So Steve was the main, it was officially his book, but it was often running late for various reasons. And so they would bring me in to sometimes just help out on 4 or 5 or 6 pages, sometimes half an issue. And then there was a period where Steve decided to take a break from the book and do something else. And I was like, so the solo inker on Fables for about a year or maybe a year and a half. I'm not quite sure at this point. But I also worked on Jack of Fables, and that's how I got involved with doing the other Fable stuff. Is Tony Akins, who's another local Chicago guy.
Absolutely.
Got me in on Jack of Fables, and Shelley seemed to like what I was. Shelley Bond was the editor, seemed to like what I was doing with Jack, and so when they needed some help on Fables, I ended up on that. I ended up working on Fairest. I ended up working on Wolves Among Us. I did the literals. So I think I worked on just about every Fables series that they ever did, except for Cinderella.
Okay.
Had my hand in somewhere on everything. Mostly inking. Occasionally, I even did a little bit of penciling. I penciled like half an issue of Jack. I penciled little bits for Fables once in a while.
That's awesome, man. And also, again, your bongo work. For a long time. That was a great long. It bums me out that I know Bongo still does specialty things like Simpsons calendars and things like that, but I really am bummed that they stopped the comics because they were great.
I am bummed too, and so is my bank account. But
I understand.
But no, I mean, here's the thing about Bongo. Bongo, they were fantastic. They were one of the best. It was one of the best working situations I've ever had in comics. It was like you were a little family, and they treated the creators well. We got paid decently. We got paid on time. I almost never had to rush anything. I can think of only maybe 1 or 2 times in the 18 years I worked on that where it was like, "Hey, Andrew, we need this fast." Usually it was like, "Nope," they because that's always the thing. It's like a lot of comics. It's always like, "Oh, we need it fast," and you're always upset that you can't do your best work. With most of the Simpsons and Futurama stuff that I did for Bongo, I was able to just do my best, and it was just fun comics.
Yeah.
That was the other thing. Like I like making fun comics, and they were just fun comics, and there were so many good people working on them. I mean, you had Bill Morrison as the editor in chief, who's a fantastic artist in his own right.
Indeed.
And you had Jason Ho and Nathan Kane, who are also both great artists as like the editors. And I was working with James Lloyd and John Delaney and Nina Matsumoto and all sorts of other great people on these books. And it was literally a pleasure. It was just fun to do these things.
I love having Bill on, and Groening himself, Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons and Life in Hell, a great cartoonist himself, doing all those wonderful Life in Hell strips. I mean, I would assume that he got it, and it was his candy store. And he knows what it's like to be on the other end as a cartoonist, and so that was really always great to hear. And yeah, I love talking to Bill. I always love talking.
Yeah. No, Bill's great, and I'm sure has tons of stories about old comics as well.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, I'll be sitting next to Bill at Heroes Con this weekend.
Oh, that's great, man. Oh, I'm glad you're going to Heroes. That's wonderful. I gotta get down there at some point. I know how great that show is.
Have you never been?
No, I just timing. A lot of times having a full-time radio job at the same time was tough to get away, so I had to kind of pick and choose my shots. So yeah, I didn't go down. But no, I mean, I love the idea of Shelton Drum, and I really respect him putting that show together. My favorite story is back in 2008 when Wizard tried to have a competing show that same weekend.
Right.
And it became this industry cause celeb where everyone's like, yeah, fuck Wizard, I'm going to Shelton's show.
Right. Yeah. He had like the best guest list ever in the history of American comics that weekend because I mean, I hadn't been able to go for a couple years, and I know I called Shelton and was like, "I'm coming. You don't have to, it's like I'm just if you can find me a table, I'm good. I'll buy, I'll do my own plane ticket and hotel and everything, and just."
And it was such an avalanche of goodwill towards the Heroes Con that Wizard's like, "All right, sorry, we'll pick another weekend." whatever.
Right. Yeah, I think they were trying to do theirs in Atlanta or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like tri-state area close enough.
Right. Yeah, Charlotte and Atlanta are only like a 4 or 5 hour drive apart from each other, so it's not. It's yeah, they're pulling on the same audience.
Yep.
And yeah, I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, but I mean, it's always he always just does a great show. I first started going when I lived in North Carolina for about 5 years in the mid '90s, and so when I moved down there in '94, like I got to meet some of the guys who lived down there, like Mike Wieringo and Chuck Wojciech, and and they were like, oh, you got to go over to you got to check out Heroes Con. So I went, and I haven't been able to go every year, but I've been a fair amount of times over the years, and it's one of my favorite shows. It's always just a great time.
Well, people are going to have to look you up, man. Obviously, you'll have a lot of product there, including previous, Simone and Ajax.
Yep. Got to be a huckster for my book,
absolutely.
And I will be there. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna be a little huckster here for a second and just say, hey, if you want to find the Kickstarter or find my books in general, easiest way is go to pepoy.com, pepoy.com. And certainly right now, while the Kickstarter is active, as soon as you get there, there's like a pop-up box, or there is or the first image on the when you hit there is going to say click here to go to the Kickstarter. So you can do that. But even any time after that, up in the upper right corner, I just updated this. There's now a button that says buy books, and that will take you to. Yep, thank you for putting that up there. That will take you to whatever campaign I have active at the time. And if Kickstarter is not active, I have an Indiegogo page, an Indiegogo in-demand page that serves as a store where I can just keep selling them afterwards.
That's great, man.
Yeah. So right now you can back the new one, what's black and white and red all over. And yes, you can do a bundle of the two books combined through the Kickstarter, but you can also, if you really want the new color book right away and don't have to wait for the Kickstarter book to come out, you can go to the Indiegogo page and immediately order that, and within 2 weeks I will ship the book out to you.
That's great.
They're ready to go. So yeah, so I just wanted to make sure anyone who's looking for that can go there. If you want to find out where I'm going to be at conventions, I'm trying to keep them listed on there. One of the best ways is to keep up with me is I have a newsletter you can sign up for at pepoy.com, and of course I'm on social media.
Yes.
So just you can find me.
Give your Twitter and Instagram and everybody else.
Well, I'm not real active on Twitter at the moment. So,
okay. But I get it. And believe me, from a political standpoint, but Twitter is what you want to make of it. If you want to mute the assholes, it's easy to do that. Mm-hmm. I just like the brevity of Twitter, and I still do Facebook as well. Yeah. And I try to do Instagram, but I'm an audio guy, so it's like
right. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I never seem to get much traction on Twitter anyway, so it wasn't a huge loss for me. But Instagram, I've got an Instagram at Andrew Pepoy, and Simone and Ajax have their own at Simone and Ajax. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter if you want, and then maybe I'll come back. It's at Andrew Pepoy. But for Facebook, it's just facebook.com/Andrew Pepoy.
Sure.
And same thing for Simone and Ajax. It's facebook.com/Simone and Ajax, because they have their own page as well. And eventually, Monica Moon, who we mentioned, will have her own page as well.
Oh, that's great. Once again, an image of Monica Moon, everybody.
Yeah, I'm actually in the process of drawing the first thing I've done with Monica in, just the first little image of Monica in, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 years. For the Baltimore Comic-Con yearbook. I don't know if you've heard what they're doing this year.
Tell me.
So do you know do you know how Baltimore Comic-Con does the yearbook every year? Okay, so usually it has to do with some indie comic. Once in a while, something else like a creator-owned character. They've done Liberty Meadows. How I'm going to totally butcher the name. Usagi or Jimbo or something.
Yeah. Stan Sakai stuff. Yeah.
Or they did Tello, Mike Wieringo and Telos and all, and Todd DeZago. And anyway, so or one year there was just a theme, monsters. But this year the theme is I guess for various reasons they can't call it they're calling it the Crossroads crossover, and it is celebrating the 40 years of American Flag and Nexus and E-Man and all that sort of stuff. And so who I'm talking about, even if they're not saying it's actually that.
Okay.
You know,
Our Howard
yes,
and
American flag and all that stuff.
okay,
Yeah.
and
And most of those guys, Howard and Joe and Mike Gold and Mike Grell and Tim Truman and all those guys are going to be there.
oh, that's great.
So yeah, and so they encourage you to cross over your own characters with whoever the theme character is. So I've had in the past, Simone and Ajax meeting, Brandy from Liberty Meadows or Sarah from Telos and stuff. And so this year, that I want to, I don't want to like go into exactly what it is, but I'm having Simone and Ajax and Monica Moon meet some of the characters
Great.
because I want to get Monica back out there too. And
Yeah.
and what I'm doing an homage to, a Chaikin image, and
Outstanding.
and so I'm making sure that Simone, Ajax, and some of these other characters. So it's just fun.
Andrew, you grew up here, didn't you?
No, I grew up in Holland, Michigan.
Okay.
I moved here in '87 for college.
Okay, because when I was in college, I was bummed because First Comics was based in Evanston,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up in Wilmette, right next door to Evanston, the town next door, and spent many high school years in Evanston hanging out. And I tell the guys like Gold and Grell and Howard, and I'm like, I was down at Illinois State, 2 hours away. I'm like, had I known, I would have been bugging you guys all the time in the 80s when you guys were Tim Truman too, all the first guys. Because it kills me. I'm like, oh my God, there was a comic book publisher in my backyard.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
I mean, Joe Staten lived here for a while during that period. Because I mean, a lot of those guys obviously were living elsewhere. I think
sure.
Chaikin was in Los Angeles, and
but he was here for a while, and I don't remember when, but I know he did spend extended time.
But I think that was when he was a lot younger. I think that might have been even in the late '60s, early '70s, if I remember.
Right.
If I remember right, yeah,
you're probably right.
Pre-professional days.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I know he certainly, or like I recently found out he knew the mom of one of my friends, back when they were younger and he lived here and stuff.
Well, my favorite First Comics connection is with Grimjack and Munden's Bar. And I don't know if you ever went to the bar that inspired Munden's Bar in Grimjack. It was like everybody listening and watching, think of Rick's Cafe in Casablanca, or even Quark in Deep Space Nine, where it was just this, especially in the Grimjack universe, this intergalactic pan-dimensional bar that all these different aliens would hang out in and stuff. And the inspiration for it was down the street from WXRT when it was on the northwest side. It was called the Bucket of Suds, and it was like at Belmont and Cicero on the northwest side of the city. And I mean, it was a massive XRT hangout, but they had Tim Truman art from Hawk World, and it had Carter Hall, Hawkman, walking into Bucket of Suds, hanging out and stuff. But no, both Grell and Mike Gold have always said, "Oh no, Munden's Bar is inspired by the Bucket of Suds." And Joe Dano, who owned it, was a radio DJ, a jazz DJ, and he was known as the jazz philosopher here in town. Great guy. Well, I'm going to bug Andrew about my favorite subject. Andrew and I invariably, when we're both at the same convention, always either on the flight there or on the flight home, are sitting in the terminal waiting for our luggage or whatever.
Yeah, like last year for 3 hours.
Oh my God, I know, what a nightmare. Oh my God. But we try to pass the time talking about old TV. And Andrew is hardcore, man, because I know, and I don't know how many of your old VHSs you still have. Well, a lot of stuff never made it to DVD. So I imagine you have a lot of VHSs still.
I do, but I mean, I'll admit at this point.
You're back.
Okay. I'm back. You're back.
Go on, say it again.
Yeah, I mean, I still have way too many VHSs, but a lot of them are, but they're mostly just still in boxes at this point. I almost never have, time to pull them out and watch them. And that's, it's like I always say, there's so much, so much TV and so many movies to watch in so little time, and especially, when you're making comics. I mean, some guys here, I know a lot of guys put the TV on while they're working. I can't do that. That doesn't work for me because I'm going to want to see it. I mean, I know it drives, Jen and others nuts when we're watching, a TV show, and it's like they're on their phone or they're doing something else. And I'm just like, no. I want I want to watch the TV show. I've got to
Yeah,
see what's going on. I want to
yeah.
discuss this while we're watching it because it's, maybe a comment here or there, but it's like no. I'm into whatever I'm watching. So I don't get to watch a lot of stuff. I mean, thank God for radio shows because that I can listen to while I'm working. I
Old time
listen to
radio.
old time radio or even new time radio.
I was going to say, Andrew, isn't it great that audio drama is back here in the States? I mean, it never left pretty much the rest of the world, including Canada right above us. But I'm very impressed with current audio drama. The sound obviously is only improved, but honestly, I think the writing and the acting is very good.
Well, there's some great stuff. I love the Doctor Who audio stuff.
Big Finish, yeah,
Big Finish. I love those. I listen to those all the time.
sure.
And again, but even though I listen to a lot of them, there's so much of it. I never can get to all of it. There's
100%.
no, and then there's the BBC still making radio shows, and I stream that stuff off.
Me too.
Like Bill Nye is always doing some radio show or other over there, and he's even been DJing lately.
I didn't know. Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Yeah, he like was okay. So Iggy Pop has a radio show on BBC Six, and so I'm guessing sometimes because Iggy's on tour or something like that, he can't host a show, and his fill-in has been Bill Nye filling in for him on the radio show, and so I thought, okay, well, I guess they know each other, and probably that's his fill-in. But then he was just filling in for one of the regular daily DJs the other day on BBC Six, and it's just like, this is just it's just weird, but cool, because he just seems like a cool guy.
Well, I didn't know Ricky Gervais and Steve Merchant. I knew about their podcast, but it started as a BBC DJ show, and they were both. Well, Steve was a radio DJ for the BBC, and I don't know how much Ricky's acting and comedy, whatever, but they got together at the BBC prior to them doing their podcast together, and that's where they discovered the radio engineer Carl Pilkington, who kind of became his own comedy star without him realizing that he was a comedian. I mean, he's ironically funny, and just the way he talks and tells stories, it's just ridiculous. But I want to ask you about the black and white shows. So I hear you, and I honestly every now and then I'll put TV on when I'm editing audio, but it has to be a rerun like Star Trek, which I've seen a million times.
Okay.
So I could have a Star Trek episode while I'm editing, and it's not a big deal. What are your go-to black and white, or even actually more so, what are your obscure TV shows that you absolutely love and you watch over and over again?
I mean, that's the thing. I don't watch a whole lot of stuff over and over and over again because there is so much to watch.
Sure.
But I mean, it's the same thing with books and stuff. I rarely rewatch or reread anything because there's still so much I haven't read or seen for the first time. So you and I were talking before the show. Currently I'm as far as old black and white stuff goes, I'm watching The Adventures of China Smith with Dan Duryea. It was a low budget half-hour adventure show from 1951. Wow. There's not that many episodes that have survived. I think it ran for 2 seasons, and these are and the video quality of what's left is not great. So I'm just sort of watching the set that I picked up of what survives in whatever form it's still left in, and it's just a lot of fun because Dan Duryea is just great, and he plays this sort of private investigator who happens to live in. It's never quite made clear whether he's in Hong Kong or where he is exactly, and calling him China Smith would certainly never fly today. But
sure.
But yeah, he's off in that part of the world, doing adventures and often there's of course the some kind of attractive woman, comes through there. Like the other day, the 1940s B movie actress that I always had a soft spot for, Donna Drake, played one of the sort of she played sort of an I don't even know what to call her. Somewhere in the middle. She was sort of couldn't quite figure out was she a good person or a bad person.
Okay.
But she was sort of in the middle there,
I'm sure you're a fan of, first of all, the show Johnny Staccato.
Oh, of course, yes.
The great John and
Cassavetes.
Cassavetes, absolutely. Yeah. And he's a jazz lounge piano player by night, and solves crimes by day. And there's a great episode, and I'm sure you're well aware of it. Pre-Bewitched Elizabeth Montgomery.
Oh yeah.
Like crazy hot in this thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
And
fantastic.
I mean, God bless Elizabeth Montgomery, beautiful woman,
Mhm.
always a beautiful woman. But yeah, it's great seeing her as a femme fatale. Or
what about the Mary Tyler Moore episode?
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that on Staccato. Sure.
As the psychotic killer.
Yes. Well, and I mean, for me, of course, with Mary Tyler Moore, I love just looking at her legs on Richard Diamond.
Yes.
She's Sam this, and there's even an inside joke, and only people like me and Andrew are probably the last ones who could get it. But there's that great episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show where Rob might take a job at a Playboy style magazine, and his old college friend is like the Hugh Hefner of the magazine, and there's a secretary on the intercom, and it's Mary Tyler Moore doing her Richard Diamond Sam voice, and the guy goes, "Yeah, thanks, Sam," and it's like, that's awesome, man.
I don't remember that, but I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, it's the Emperor magazine. I forget the title of the episode.
Yeah,
but you'd know it if you saw it. It's very, very funny. But yeah. No, I love stuff like that. Yeah. Now I gotta find China Smith, because I mean, like you said, a lot of these prints are so washed out, and there are tape heads that will upload that stuff on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sure you can find some of it on YouTube, and you're probably not losing a whole lot in video quality, because the video quality on this is not great as is. I mean, on the other hand, the other old 50s show I'm watching, it's like pristine prints, though not quite as good of a show. Like we were talking beforehand, I'm watching How to Marry a Millionaire. With a very young Barbara Eden on there playing the Marilyn Monroe part,
right?
And it is definitely not a great TV series, and is usually only worth watching for Barbara. And though it is fun to find, like you end up with a lot of radio actors doing some of the guest bits on there, and it's like, oh, now I know what that guy looks like, because it's always the problem is if you get to the credits at the end. And so I always watch the credits and I go, oh, that guy was that. And I just didn't quite place it at the time. And, wish I'd known during the episode that it was that was the voice of the Whistler,
Yeah. Jay Novello would always play like ethnic, like immigrant parts of Western Europe characters. Sometimes he was Italian, sometimes he was something else. And, but on radio, he had this great leading man delivery, and he was the original Jack Packard, or maybe he was the second run, but that great radio serial, I Love a Mystery.
Right.
With the three detectives.
Yeah.
And maybe now that I'm thinking about it, he might have been in the second cast with Tony Randall as Reggie York, the British guy. Right. But that's the thing. I mean, like, and he had this very tough leading. It's like when Wallace Shawn shows up in Radio Days as the Masked Avenger, and you see that it's little Wallace Shawn, and he's, fear not, evildoers, or whatever he says. And it's like, that was the great thing about radio. A guy could be 5 foot tall, but he's playing Lamont Cranston or whatever. He's the leading man on the radio show.
Right. Or like, you had Bob Bailey as Johnny Dollar, who definitely did not, if you saw Bob Bailey, it's like, it's not like he was a bad looking guy, but it's sort of like he just definitely didn't look like Johnny Dollar. Or Bud Collyer, who played Superman. Bald and with glasses. And
he later did maybe it was To Tell the Truth. I definitely have seen him on the game show on Buzzer.
Right. He did a game show. Yeah, it wasn't To Tell the Truth, but yes, he was. I can't remember the name of the show he was on, but yeah.
But yeah, there's Superman. He's hosting a game show.
Yeah,
no, it's great, man. Yeah,
but he had that great Superman voice,
and also and both in the cartoons and in the radio, where Clark Kent would be, "This is a job for Superman." And it was like, he'd drop his voice down for Superman. And it was like, it's brilliant, man.
Yeah.
Oh no, I love Bud Collyer.
No, that is something that I do listen to. Like I said, I don't repeat a lot of things, but I love the Superman radio show from the 40s.
It's interesting.
And that I have listened to every surviving episode, in order multiple times over the years. I mean, I've been doing this for 34, I've been doing the comics for 34 years, and the radio shows are one of the things that have kept me sane, pulling these late nights and stuff like that. And I am on probably at least my third, if not my fourth listen to whatever survives of Superman. Most of the World War II stuff, like the pre-World War II stuff survives, the post-World War II stuff survives. Most of the World War II stuff is gone.
Interesting.
It's missing. But yeah, I just love listening to that, and I'm working my way through that for the third or fourth time because I just really love those, and that's one of the things that most got me into those as a kid was my parents bought me a couple records of
Yeah.
Superman, sponsored by Kellogg's Pep. Unfortunately, my parent like it was a 4 record set, and my parents bought me 2 different volumes out of it, and the problem was they were designed to be like played on a stereo straight through, like stacked stereo. So you had to have like all 4 of them to like play them through and then flip them over and play them through again. And I
Interesting.
had like 2 not connected. I think I had like volumes 1 and 3.
Oh,
So
okay.
so I'd hear 2 episodes of Connected, and then I'd be missing, and then I'd have like 2 episodes of Connected and then missing. And but yeah, so it was years later before I finally got to actually hear those the way they were supposed to be.
When I worked at WBBM Radio here in Chicago and was doing overnight traffic, we it was so weird. But at midnight, and they still do it, they break for an old time radio hour, and it's called I believe it's called When Radio Was.
Oh, okay.
And they were playing. And again, I mean, I'd work overnights, 4 or 5 days a week, and I would every week on like Wednesday or Thursday, they would run a 15-minute episode of Adventures of Superman. And yeah, man, I heard the Batman episodes, which is great that Batman was a guest star, stuff like that. No, the radio shows for me that hold up and I really love, and it's a short list, but you mentioned Bob Bailey's Johnny Dollar.
Right.
Those 5-day a week.
Oh no, those are some of the best. Yes, I've actually been listening to some of those again for who knows how many the multiple time.
There's some of the best. I mean, it ends up being an hour I got to do the math in my head. It was a 15-minute segment of a 5-episode serial every week, and they're like mini movies, man. And they're radio noir. In fact, Mike Cronenberg, my guest last night, we were talking about a lot of those shows like Pat Novak and a lot of radio detective stuff that was coming out when film noir was coming out, and they obviously had the advantage of audio. And God, like Pat Novak is such an atmospheric San Francisco docks, tough guy detective show. I love that stuff. And also, Gunsmoke really holds up. And it's such I always refer to William Conrad as the Spencer Tracy of radio, because people might remember him from Jake and the Fat Man or Cannon. And that voice, man, again, authoritative and just was really one of the finest radio actors out there.
Oh yeah. You can never mistake his voice. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I mean, there's just so many great radio shows. Like, have you ever heard Bob Bailey's earlier "Let George Do It" series?
Yes, I love Let George Do It. That's a great show. That's a lot of fun. And Richard Diamond on radio.
Oh, Richard Diamond is fantastic as well.
And Alan Ladd, Box 13 is a fine show. And Bold Venture with Bogey and Bacall.
Yeah, I mean, Rocky Jordan. Have you heard?
Love Rocky Jordan.
Yeah, there's one that even a lot of old radio fans don't even know. And I love Rocky Jordan, because it's basically, Rick's Cafe from Casablanca, but not calling it Casablanca.
100%. Honestly, Andrew, I wish I could draw, because I would adapt so many radio shows into comics. I'm sure they wouldn't sell well, but I would at least enjoy making them.
Right.
And I would love to do that. I just, I've got several, I try to keep my ideas no more than 10 pages. And unfortunately, most of the artists I know are artists like you. It's like, they don't have time to do this shit. They're doing their stuff that makes money, man. Like,
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I've thought about doing the radio show adaptations myself before. I know whether it was Moonstone or somebody else. I'm gonna cover up the mic here for a second because I do need to cough. I'm sorry, but
go ahead and cough. It's okay, buddy. I know while you're coughing, while he doesn't have his earbuds in,
I seem to have inhaled like a piece of dust or something like that.
That's why I got the drink with me.
Yeah, I mean, I've got water here, but still, I just
no problem.
Anyway, yeah, no, I mean, I know there was a time I was talking with some publisher, and it might have been Moonstone or somebody, about doing adaptations of Rocky Jordan and doing an adaptation of Candy Matson.
Sure, the female detective, Candy Matson.
Yeah, I even had like sort of a style I had decided I was going to do that, and
that'd be great.
Going to be based sort of on my Katie Keene stuff, but with this more Russell Patterson kind of flourish to the brush lines and stuff. If you know Russell Patterson stuff,
okay.
Do you know that? Okay.
Again,
a very distinctive cartoonist of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and stuff like that.
Very good. No, that's great. Well, I remember Moonstone did a Johnny Dollar.
Right. They did Johnny Dollar. They did Box 13.
And they I forgot they did do Box 13. Yes, yes. And also, I know they did a Mr. Moto story as well.
Did they?
I don't think it's radio, but
well, there was a Mr. Moto radio show.
I didn't remember that. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, it was it started out. I was a Mr. Moto fan of like the. I discovered him through one of the Peter Lorre movies from the late 30s.
Sure.
And then those were based on a series of mystery novels.
Yes.
And I actually enjoyed those. I tracked. Fortunately, right around that time, they reissued the Mr. Moto novels in the 80s. With these really nicely illustrated covers, and I was able to track those down and enjoyed those. And I do like the Peter Lorre movies. I mean, once again, so not politically correct today.
Yeah, unfortunately.
But
or I should say, no disrespect. And unfortunately, a non-Asian played Moto in Peter Lorre and stuff.
Right.
So that's why I was so excited for. And I don't know if you ever edited any of your stuff when you were at Vertigo, but Pornsack Pishat show it did the Good Asian. Last year, and I think it's great and truly, and Ron V is like this as well, the wonderful British writer, where they take foreign intrigue, or in the case of the Good Asian, they take your Asian detective in Chinatown trope and they make it good for modern day, and it's not stereotypical portrayals of the characters, and they really give I always give it up to Ron V for a book he did called These Savage Shores, where it was a white British Dracula-like vampire going to Mumbai, and the locals kicked the shit out of him. and he's like, this is going to be a field day, and it's like, not in our town, pal. And it's fantastic. It's great. Yes, that's all right. Tamalo 70, and yes, I remember this. Our buddy Raph Neves and Tim Hamilton did the photo for Moonstone. Absolutely, and Tim's art is so great, and Raph's a hell of a writer.
Was that Tony Maldonado that was commenting there?
I'm assuming, Tony. I hope that is you, man. I certainly hope so. I didn't recognize the handle, and if it is Tony, man, I haven't seen him forever. But
I was driving down the street the other day, and there was Tony walking down the street, and I was just like pulled over, and Tony was on his way to work, and I was like, "Here, I'll give you a ride." And
that's nice.
I was like, just randomly on the northwest side. I happen to be on the northwest side of town for something, and I'm just randomly. It's like I see this guy walking ahead from behind, and I'm thinking, "Yeah, it's Tony." Yeah, and I was like, "That looks like Tony," and I pull up,
great,
and it's Tony.
Tony can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the last time I saw him, we were both on a CTA bus, and it's like, Tony, how are you?
Yeah, he's everywhere. He's everywhere.
Yeah, no, it's great, man. A hell of an artist, everybody.
Yeah, and a really nice guy.
Sweetheart of a guy, absolutely. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Tone, forgive me, man. I know you've probably shown up on old word balloons here and there. I didn't realize it was you. I'm really glad you're watching tonight. That's great. Well, Andrew, I know I'm keeping you for half your dinner, so we can wrap up, but we will wrap up by pointing out once again that the new campaign for Simone and Ajax just started today. And go to pepoy.com. You can see it right there on the screen to get the link to the Kickstarter.
Yeah, or just go to Kickstarter and search Pepoy. I mean, my name's distinctive enough. I don't think there's another Pepoy on there, and that'll take you to it. But I mean, it's an uncommon name. That's why I was able to grab my last name as a domain name. And yeah, it's up there. Let me tell you a little bit more about it real quick. It's a 160 page book, so it's a bit bigger than either of the other.
Great.
Yeah, it's a bit bigger than either of the other Simone and Ajax books I've done before, because there was that much material. I mean, originally I was going to do more like 144 pages, and then I just realized there was too much extra stuff as I was sort of digging through boxes, because one of the other things I'd wanted to include in it, so I had done most of that Simone and Ajax stuff on Craft Tint board. Do you remember Craft Tint Duo-Shade?
Yeah.
Which they don't make anymore because it was poisonous, and computers took the place of it anyway. Patrick McDonald got mercury poisoning from the stuff.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
You know Patrick's stuff, right?
I'm aware of him, sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm Duo-Shade's like. Duo-Shade was okay. For those of you who don't know, if you go back and you look up, the easiest way to find it is if you go to my web, if you go to my campaign, you'll see these things have like a 50% tone and 25% tone. If you look real closely, it's made up of horizontal line patterns. And so there would be on your Bristol board, there would be invisibly printed 2 chemical screens, one going one direction, one going the other direction, and you had 2 different developer solutions that were clear. And so you'd go in, you'd pencil, you'd letter, you ink on the board, and then you could go in with this clear liquid, and one of them would bring out just one of the lines, so you'd have a 25% tone. So you're almost like painting in the gray. And the other one would bring out both of them. So you'd have more of a 50% tone, because you needed this mechanical solid black and white line tone for newspaper printing and things like that back in the 30s, 40s, 50s. You couldn't you couldn't do fancy paint, just do actual gray tones and actually expect it to print decently. And I had a point. And I forgot where I was going with
paper, that. It had mercury in it, and it is no longer available because.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, because I'm going for a special kind of printing for this to make that work well, because scanning duo-shade or scanning zipatone often doesn't result in good results. You have these moire patterns. For those of you who know what that means, you have these moire patterns that show up because modern scanning just does not seem to like these mechanical gray tone patterns, either one. And so I am working to be very careful to make sure that this prints well. And so I want to make sure I use every single thing I did with craft tin, with the duo-shade technique in this one book, because it just won't print well. If I run across something and want to stick it in the back as an extra of one of the color volumes in the future, it's not going to look very good, probably. Yeah. So I had done several times. I had done complete mini comics as my Christmas card, and so I was tracking all those down. And I knew I had everything scanned from 4 of them. I knew there was one more, and I'd completely forgotten that there was another one. So now it kept getting bigger. So now I'm putting I've now tracked down everything, I think, as far as the Christmas cards go. With the exception of the very first Simone and Ajax Christmas card, where I have something I can't print from. But I'm gonna, anything I had done with all 6 mini comic Christmas cards gonna be in there, as well as anything else I ever did on the craft tin thing for pinups or prints or stuff like that. Okay. And so it's also gonna have this really fun extra section of all sorts of other artwork I was doing at the time, because these strips all appeared. Like I said, there was the college story in 1990, but everything else appeared between 1994 and 99, with one last black and white Simone and Ajax story done around 2004, and which ends on a cliffhanger, which leads into the IDW color book, which is now out of print. But I'm going to put that out next. I'm going to try to get that republished next year in hardcover this time. But anyway, so the book just kept getting bigger as I kept finding more and more stuff that I had to cram into this book so I could fit all the duo-shade stuff. And so it's 160 pages, and all and like I said, so it's all the old comic book stories, and it's got all these fun extras, and including, like I said, that very first story I did with them when I was still in college, so you can see how it all started. And I, like I said, it's a silly book, and I just hope people are going to have a good time with it. Like I said, like I said on the promo, you can see, their first detective story, which actually ties into a story in last year's book, or I have my mocking Hootie and the Blowfish story because I was not a fan, and or Simone goes to Valkyrie school, or you find out what really did happen to Atlantis, and so it's just having fun with this kind of stuff, and I hope everybody else will too, and especially the annual Christmas card battle with Santa Claus.
Outstanding, all ages action in Simone.
Yeah, I say literally, and it's for anyone 10 years old to death, basically. I try to write it so that a kid can have a good time with it. It's just silly and ridiculous, and they're not even going to notice they're not catching some of the jokes. And with some of the jokes, someone older is going to get, and hopefully, get an extra chuckle out of it that way.
Sounds great, man. Pepoy.com, everyone, will direct you to the Kickstarter, or as Andrew said, go to Kickstarter.com and search Pepoy, and I'm sure you'll find the campaign. Still plenty of time to jump on.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people are going to be watching this after the fact. Like I know you keep these things posted online, so I just want to mention real quick, the Kickstarter is from today, June 13th, 2023, till July 13th. you miss that, if you're watching, let's say you're watching this in August or September or in the year 25, the year 2025.
25,
I almost
25.
said 25, 25, like the song, and if you are watching this in 25, 25, assuming my website is still alive, but yeah, in any case, you'll still be able to go to pepoy.com and click the buy books button, and wherever I have it for sale at that point, you'll be able to get it that way. Because right now, these books are not through Diamond; they're not they're only in certain select comic shops, that have been kind enough to carry it, like Challengers Comics here in Chicago. But so you can get them from me. And so if you're watching this after the fact, if you miss the Kickstarter, you're not out of luck. You can still go. And I'm going to have an Indiegogo in-demand page go live the moment the Kickstarter ends, so that you can still buy it for years to come.
And if you're heading to HeroesCon this weekend, you'll see Andrew there tabling, and they'll have plenty of Simone and Ajax product there for you as well. So
I'm going to be at a lot of cons in the next few weeks. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to be HeroesCon this coming weekend. I'm going to be at the American Library Association convention here in Chicago. Okay, great. I'll see you there. I'll be at that the following weekend. I then have a couple weeks off. And then in the second weekend of July, I am at the Wyoming Pop Culture Con in Casper, Wyoming. I'll be hanging out with Gene Ha.
That's great.
Yeah, there's not a lot of comics guests, but Gene and I are both going. I ran into Gene the other night at the Yeah Yeah Yeahs concert. I was sitting there looking at my phone in between the bands, and then I see this picture that Gene had posted on Facebook, and I'm going, that's almost exactly the same view I have. So I turn around and I'm like looking, and there's Gene and his wife Lisa, just a few rows behind me. Northerly Island.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, and so I'm doing that, and then a week and a half after Casper, I'll be out in San Diego Comic-Con. Small press table M13. So nobody's looking for me in Artist Alley, because that was the problem last year. A lot of people were looking for me in Artist Alley. Artist Alley has double letters, so that would be like an MM13. The small press section's right behind the main publisher section in San Diego. So I'll be at table M13, and then the week after that, I'm going to be at Terrificon.
I will see you at Terrificon.
Oh, okay, yeah. I hear this is a great show. I've never been.
It's a great show. It's a great venue. It's Mohegan Sun Casino. That really is like, there's a casino, and it's a great casino, but it's a great resort, and swimming pools and great weather and fantastic bars, fantastic restaurants, a lot of cute little stores. It's a really nice resort, and I've been going there for many years, and I'm moderating many panels there. So I don't believe I are on a panel, but it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, I mean, you can throw me on a panel. I don't think I'm on any panels yet that they've told me about. I mean, sometimes they don't remember to tell me till I get there.
I understand.
But I'm all, I'm going to be a fan there as much as I'm a professional, because it's like, I mean, they just have this fantastic guest list. And that's one reason why I wanted to go, because, Howard Chaykin and Bob McLeod and all these other people, people who I grew up loving reading, were telling me how great this show was. And it's, when they invited me, they were like, we wanted to get some younger guys in there. And it's like, so I've been doing this for 34 years, and I'm in my 50s, and I'm one of the younger guys. But I know Jerry, I know Jerry Ordway suggested me at one point for it too, and it's just, I mean, and that's one of these surreal things in comics. I don't know how it is for you, but it's just sort of like the fact that like these were the guys whose work I loved as a kid, and now I know them, to at least a nodding acquaintance degree, to perhaps better than that in some situations, and the fact that I can go out to I invited Howard Chaykin out to dinner at Baltimore one night, and he said yes, and I mean,
I've had the pleasure, believe me, and Howard and I had a great time last year at Terrificon, and I was walking, maybe 5 feet ahead of him, and I had no idea he was behind me, and all of a sudden he nudges me in the back, and I turn, I'm like, Howard, that's great, man. I bought a Magneto original page from him, and it was very reasonable, and he's like, he signs his name. I'm like, Howard, you could personalize this. I'm not going to sell it again. I'm like, I want this. Make it to John. He's like, okay.
No, I had the same thing. I bought a page from, I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was one of his more independent graphic novels, just because I wanted a nice Chaikin page.
Yeah. Oh my
And
God.
it's like, I don't care that it's not from some famous thing. I mean, yes, would I love to have a really nice American flag page? Yes, I would, because
Sure, of course.
or the Scorpion. I mean, those are probably my two
Oh God,
favorite things.
yes, the Scorpion.
Yeah,
Yes.
those are probably my two favorite things that I mean, he's done lots of great stuff, but as a kid, those were the ones I loved.
Oh no, I get it.
But yeah, he says yes, and I sometimes in Baltimore I'll put together these dinners of the guys I want to have, that I'm a fan of, and so like I ended up, so we ended up with at that dinner we ended up with Chaikin sitting across from Mike Royer, and if you know
I
Mike
love
Royer,
Mike. Oh, I
yeah,
would see him
and the
forever,
two
but
of
I
them were
love
just
Mike.
like nonstop talking,
Sure,
the
great
whole time,
stories.
but
Yes.
or I had what I called Andrew's 12-year-old fanboy dinner one year, where it was Al Milgrom, Mike Vosberg, Joe Staten, Fred Hembeck, Steve Lealoa, and I know I'm forgetting a couple people, but it's like, yeah, and it's just like, these are all the guys whose work I've loved working, and I've gotten to know these guys over the years. I mean, now Fred I hadn't met until that convention, but
Oh, that's great.
I knew he was going, and I said, look, I've got all these other guys going, and I invited him, and he said yes, and he came to the dinner.
I got to get Fred on Word Balloon. We've only spoken to each other via like Facebook message and the like.
Mm-hmm.
But I am such a fan. And no, you're right, man. I mean, good Lord, last year at Terrificon, we had a Spider-Man writers panel, and I had met Jerry Conway before, but first time I met Howard Mackey, first time I met Terry Kavanaugh. Jurgens has become a friend. I mean, no, man, and really, I am not a creator. I talk about comics. It's just like when I said I was not an athlete, but I did work in sports. I worked in sports radio.
Right.
So no, it's the same vibe. But no, getting to know these guys and having conversations beyond Word Balloon is always a treat. And no, I feel the same way, man.
But it's just kind of surreal that like these were my favorites, and like I remember sitting in the high school hallway reading Camelot 3000 as a kid, and now I can sit with Brian Bolland in a bar talking music, talking about not the Killing Joke the book, but Killing Joke the band.
Sure,
and that's what Brian and I always talk about music.
That's Shelley Bond and I. That's me and Shelley and everything. So
yeah,
I hear you, man.
Yeah, it's just one of those fun, surreal things. So yeah, that's what I am as much a fan at a lot of these shows as I am, one of the pros. So I know that like my girlfriend Jules is going with me to Heroes Con. She's gonna be stuck at the table every once in a while, because I'm gonna be like off going and talking to Jose Luis Garcia Lopez or some of these other people who are there. I haven't even had time to look at the whole guest list, but I'm sure I'm gonna be like, holy cow, I gotta go talk to this person, because. Like I said, I just love. I don't just love making comics, but I just love comics, and there's so many great creators out there, and it's just great to go to these things both as a professional and as a fan.
Well, congrats on keeping the career going, and
thank you
with Simone and Ajax. And yeah, hey man, whenever you got something new, like when Monica Moon is ready, happy to have a new conversation with you, and we'll talk more not only comics but old time radio and black and white TV and the like.
Okay, sounds great, and yeah, definitely, I will let you know when Monica's back, because I'm looking forward to people are used to Simone Ajax, but they're not used to the Monica stuff.
No, it's going to be great, man. I'm looking forward to it. Andrew Pepoy, everybody. Later this week, I'm recording a conversation with Ed Brubaker on Thursday, and we will present it on Friday. And then Friday night, Andy Parks is coming back. Andy and the Russo brothers, who did Avengers, they did Infinity War and Endgame and the Captain America movies. The three of them wrote a comic in the mid teens called Ciudad, and it was adapted for a Netflix movie called Extraction. It's the 7th most watched movie on Netflix as a Netflix original, and Extraction 2 comes out Friday. And Andy will be back to talk about the new movie and about Ciudad and a whole bunch more. So that's the week for Word Balloon this week. Until next time, everybody stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.